Spider-Man's biography. Spider-Man or Spider-Man is a superhero appearing in American stories published by Marvel Comics, and the character was written by editor Stan Lee and writer Steve Ditko. The character first appeared in a comic book in August 1962. The introduction to the character begins with a young man named Peter Parker who lives with his aunt who raised him after the death of his parents Richard and Mary Parker, who were killed in a plane crash. The two writers show us the character of a teenage young man who deals with the usual issues of teenagers, financial issues, and other ordinary matters of life, as well as showing us in the film a large group of other big characters who had a major role in the life of Spider-Man, such as J. Jonah Jameson, the editor of the daily newspaper, who is launching a campaign to discredit picture of Spider-Man, plus classmates such as Flash Thompson, Harry Osborn, Gwen Stacy, and Mary Jane Watson. His story begins when a spider bites him during a scientific university trip, gaining strange abilities such as the ability to cling to surfaces and release spider webs using a device he invented to put on his wrist, in addition to his ability to sense danger. At first he uses his abilities for entertainment and fame, but after shooting his uncle because of him, he learns to use these abilities more responsibly. Beginnings. Peter Parker was born in Queens, a borough of New York City, to Richard and Mary Parker. While Peter was still a baby, the CIA had tasked his parents with infiltrating Algeria to capture a gang led by a person named Red Skull. When the gang learns that they are double agents, Red Skull sends one of his henchmen and kills them by crashing the plane, then frames them for treason. But before their deaths, it appears that Mary gives birth to another child about whom no one even knows Peter himself, his younger sister, Teresa. Peter moves in with his uncle and aunt, Ben and May Parker, who are raising Peter as their son. Over the next 9 years, Peter will grow up to be a creative genius in science and be honored in high school. Parker's shyness and scholastic skill, however, made him a social outcast and a target for his friends to frighten, primarily football star Flash Thompson. Personal life. Peter loved many girls in his life, including Felicia Hardy, Gwen Stacy, Mary Jane Watson, Betty Brant, Michelle Gonzalez, Sarah Bailey, Julia Carpenter, Lion Tang, Bobby Morse, and others. But he only married Jane Watson. Spider-Man facts. Peter apparently hates mayonnaise, or at least in sandwiches. Spider-Man was a fan of The Lord of the Rings. Peter's sign is Libra, which means he was born between September 23rd and October 22nd. It seems that it was forbidden to show Peter drinking beer in any of the scenes. Cheer for the New York baseball team. Achievements. While attending a public exhibition on the proper handling of nuclear laboratory waste, 15-year-old Peter Parker bites a spider that had been irradiated by a particle accelerator used in the process. But after the spider fell off his hand, another girl named Sandy Moon caught her ankle and died. On his return home, Peter gets into an accident as a car almost runs over him when Peter jumps off the road, when he discovers that he has strangely acquired tremendous abilities, agility and ability to cling to walls. And because his abilities are embodied in the abilities of spiders, he connects this to a spider bite. An advertisement is posted offering a prize money to whoever can hold out in the ring for 3 minutes against Joseph Hogan. Peter finds this challenge a good way to test his abilities. He then wears a mask to avoid embarrassment if he loses, but defeats his opponent quite easily. Television producer Maxwell Skiffman notices his performance and skill and convinces him to appear on television. When Peter designs an all-encompassing costume and devises a device that releases a group of spider web-like liquids and calls himself Spider-Man. After his first television appearance, Peter evades the arrest of a thief, claiming that it is not his responsibility. Peter forgets about the accident as a result of his fame, but he returns a few days later to his home to find his uncle Ben killed, and the police learn about the whereabouts of the thief killer. Then Peter changes to Spider-Man and arrests him. But he is shocked when he discovers that he is the same thief who let him escape some time ago. And then realizing that he must be responsible for the abilities he carries, he decides to become a superhero. Peter's first problem after his uncle's death was the lack of money, which forced him to look for work to earn money for himself and his aunt. He was also unable to continue his career as a TV star due to J. Jonah Jameson's campaign against Spider-Man, accusing him of intimidating children and illegally pursuing justice. These accusations caused everyone to turn against Spider-Man, causing his boss to fire him. And then Peter's journey begins to search for work within the required advertisements. But all of his attempts fail, and he finds that his aunt starts selling her jewelry to spend money, which angers him. His second heroic act was to rescue astronaut John Jameson from the spacecraft's drift, and he returned it safely to Earth, but J.J. Jameson blamed him and accused him of masterminding the accident. He then tried to join the Fantastic Four team, as he tried to attack FF in an attempt to show his abilities in the hope of working with them. But they showed him that they were working without pay. Later that day, the Chameleon's Russian disguise expert uses Spider-Man's identity to steal missile defense plans. Spider-Man managed to escape from the police, arrested her, and handed her over to the authorities. Peter was eventually able to find a job at J. Jameson, and his job was to take pictures of Spider-Man. But Peter's condition was that he not be asked how the pictures were taken. Spider-Man faced many villains, including Dr. Octopus, Lizard, Mysterio, Fox, Green Goblin, Electro, Sandman, and others. They are all under the leadership of Dr. Octopus, who tries to get Peter to surrender himself to them by trying to kidnap his aunt, but they fail to do so. Peter continued to confront the bad guys before graduating. But while facing the Green Goblin, he heard the news of his aunt having a heart attack, forcing him to leave the battle and flee to go to her. And then J. Jameson took advantage of the situation and spread bad news about him. And the news of Spider-Man's escape spread among the people and considered him a coward. After the aunt's health improves, Peter decides to reintroduce Spider-Man among the people as a superhero and returns to fight the bad guys. Peter graduated from high school and obtained a scholarship at Empire State University with many of his friends. And there he bonded with them, such as Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy. But his relationship with the Flash remained the same. Peter gets a clipping from an old newspaper in which he finds his parents betraying their country. So he decides to travel to Algeria to find out what happened, and he is helped by the Fantastic Four team. There Peter finds his parents' identity card, which proves that they are secret agents of the CIA, which proves their innocence, and then returns to the United States. Soon, Dr. Octopus manages to escape from prison, and after Spider-Man thwarts his attempt to hijack a plane, he begins attacking the city's power plant. During the clash, Officer Stacy died while rescuing a child from wreckage falling on the roof. But he revealed to Spider-Man that he knew his identity and asked him to look after his daughter Gwen. However, the Green Goblin then kidnapped Gwen, and during his fight with Spider-Man, Gwen fell off the bridge and died. Spider-Man was also accused of killing her father. After that, Peter continued to fight the bad guys, and various events took place in his life. He then married Mary Jane and went on to graduate school, working as a laboratory assistant at Empire State University. After a while, Jane becomes pregnant and Peter loses the ability to use his powers, causing him to move to Portland and move away from the Spider-Man character and turn to his family and life. After a while, Peter and his wife return to New York, and Peter's powers return to him as his body restores those powers and heals himself. And suddenly Jane gives birth and the child is kidnapped by the Goblin. Then Peter decides to return to Spider-Man, then keep fighting the bad guys and defeating them one by one in many different battles.